I mean, honestly, I had kind of given up. I was like, there's no way that, this covert operations team, and I've worked with special ops teams before. I was like, there's just no way that, this covert operations team are going to give over this footage. Like, they never publicize what they do. And they'd already said no for 2 years. And Chad was like, I'm going to make it happen. And I was like, okay, I totally support you. I'm going to stay home with the kids. You're going to go out. And then
I needed to know that I had done absolutely everything in my power.
Yeah.
Like, I actually had to be able to look myself in the mirror and know, like, I tried everything I could.
Yeah. I was really impressed.
Breaking news right now out of Thailand.
Rescue teams are working through the night to save 12 boys and their coach trapped inside a cave.
The monsoon had come early. The conditions in the cave were impossible.
It's almost like an infinite number in terms of scouring the news stories. But at the very end, we were given 87 hours by the Thai Navy SEALs, and that was very challenging. The rescue took 2.5 years to make. We shot from 4 countries for the rescue: the US, the UK, Thailand, and Australia. We had about 120 people work on the rescue. But just remember, we were shooting in 4 different countries in a pandemic. So we couldn't have a consistent crew that could travel. So it just, the number seems bigger than it is. Our first cut must have been maybe 2 hours 20. We're very conscious of that. I mean, it's not like we watch it 10 hours, then whittle it down. Our first cut must have been like 2 hours 20.
I think it was 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And the final is 1 hour and 47 minutes.
We didn't think it was possible to dive the children out. We came up with the actual logistical plan.
I told him that's a horrible idea. And then Rick said, what if it's the only idea?
Could you please tell us the story of, I guess, when you were inspired to tell this story, and then how you went about going to get this incredibly harrowing footage that you found?
I think this idea of how so many different people came together from different, nations, countries, languages, religions, belief systems, and only in coming together we're able to achieve the impossible was something that really stuck with us. And so that's where kind of the desire to tell the story came from. We had to chase it for quite some time. It had many, many obstacles, including that there was no known footage from inside the cave. And in the course of making this film, we learned that the Thai Navy SEALs may have filmed inside the cave. So we embarked on a 2-year negotiation with them. And there's just some things that you can't do over Zoom. And that is to ask like a national special forces to trust you with their material. So it was only in May of 2021 when, after I got my second vaccine, I was able to actually go to Thailand and talk to them about it. I think that the fact that I showed up in Thailand in the middle of the pandemic was very significant for them, because they felt like we really had good intentions and were willing to go the extra mile. I think also understanding how we felt like we were in a unique position to listen to the Asian voices that were a part of the story, and that they were very important to us. And that's why we were going, we're in Thailand in the middle of a pandemic. And I think they took a great leap of faith, to do that. And it was very brave.
The Thai Navy SEALs put everything they had into it, but only this group of people who do it as a weekend hobby has those skills.
I was thinking, this has actually got our name all over it.
Were you surprised to discover that all of these men, all these divers, felt isolated when they were growing up, felt like outsiders, and they found acceptance through this passion?
I don't think surprised would be the word. I think we were interested in it. If you look at Free Solo, it's kind of like every nerd's heroic journey, right? It's like this. And I think it's something that both Jimmy and I, despite what other people may think, can really empathize with, right? We were just interested in how these divers' individual journeys prepared them for this moment, because really what's astonishing about it is the moral courage they show, right? And they have everything to lose. I think Dr. Harris is the best example, is that he's a father of 3. He's a respected anesthesiologist in Australia. If he killed one of those children, because it would be termed that way, that he killed them, he would never practice medicine again. And then the psychological implications of how do you look at your own children when you've killed someone else's child? But even understanding fully these risks, and they were saying saving one kid is an achievement. And so they were willing to take on the burden of those other 12, right? what experiences prepared you for that moment and what was interesting to us? It happens to be that they lived these kind of outsiderish lives, like they're all very intelligent, paid great attention to detail and level-headed when in the moment.
I found them very familiar in a way, from the people that I interact with a lot. And I think between Chai and I from our last two films, there's a certain type of character and character traits that you see in people who are drawn to these kind of fringe lifestyles, I call them, because they're more than sports, right? They shape their entire lives around these activities. They were kindred spirits in some way, and we understood them in a way that maybe not everybody might have understood them, just given our background.
You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Trying to wriggle through holes that I couldn't wriggle through, finding a bigger space, sliding through, and then repeating again and again.
How many of you? 13.
How did you find that balance between keeping this a serious conversation about the realities of the situation versus it kind of turning into this almost action feature?
I think it's just what we're interested in. Like the character part is what's interesting. And like, I think if you look at most of our films, is that, yes, there's the very compelling action that's transpiring, but really the question is why, like what prepares someone for that moment in their life? And suddenly, instead of being like a strange sport, it turns into a calling. Because now it's that they actually have been preparing for 40 years. Rick has been preparing for 40 years to be able to save these 13 people. The sheer moral courage of the divers, that was interesting to us. And so it becomes a question of construction then of, it was a very hard film narratively. It's like you would never write this way, where, you don't find the children until day 11, and then you see the same thing 13 times. Okay, like you would never write this movie this way. So it was about muddling our way through in the most mindful way possible.
We were brutally honest. We promised multiple fatalities.
It's about controlling your emotions and your fear. Panic is death in the cave.
The footage that you guys did recreate, I'm curious, did you actually use the original divers for that footage, and where did you go to shoot it?
We filmed in a tank, the Pinewood tank in the UK with them, because most of the divers were in the UK. We had no problem getting the divers to actually come to do the shoot because, as you can imagine, they're also very exacting, and they really were keyed in on making sure that it was authentic. Like the idea of hiring actors to do a very complex cave diving scene to them was totally unacceptable too. They came in with all of their gear and really were demonstrating how they did the rescue. And so, we went into the shoot knowing kind of what specific moments that were really critical that we really wanted to shoot. And so we were able to just say, okay, look, Rick, I need to see exactly what you were doing on day 17 between chamber 8 and chamber 9 in this moment. And they would remember and know exactly what they're doing. And so we could just film them in the way that we would have filmed it if we were there. And so what you're seeing in the film is actually accurate to the moments that we're trying to portray. And that was really important to us, really important to the divers. We did hire Thai kids. Seeing, John or Rick tying their hands behind their back, tying their feet together, and submerging their heads underwater and diving with the kids. I mean, it was terrifying in a studio tank. We couldn't even imagine what it must have been like to be like, okay, we just anesthetized these children. This has never been done before. And we're going to have to dive these kids out for several hours.
My mind was on overdrive. Oh my God, am I going to be good enough? If they die, it's going to tear me apart.
If you don't dive, everyone will die.
I do wonder, was there anything that you guys learned making this film that you will take forward?
I learned a lot. this is the hardest film. Like, I think this is my 8th film and it's the hardest one I've ever made. But I think the real thing I learned through this process was, which is a strange thing, was again, to trust the good intentions of what you're trying to do. And for me, it was like, if the divers could save these children, the least I could do is tell the best story we can, right? A lot of people trusted us. It took a long time. You know, it was a big deal. Like, people had to really go out on a limb to help us. And it worked out. You know, it's funny. I never thought about whether it would work out or not. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, it has to happen. I was like, it has to happen. It has to happen. You know, who knew that people would understand, audiences would understand the film the way we understand it. And that's something that, like, I get really emotional about, because I think the main thing after Free Solo was we realized that there is a certain platform that we have. We have 2 amazing small kids that we like spending time with. I don't know how many films we're going to make. So each one has to move the dial a little bit, like, just has to, like, project the type of world that we want to be living in, as opposed to, like, you know, the ones we're tempted to live in, you know?
And I think it also is another reminder to us how important it is when you find meaning in the story, because making documentaries is hard and it takes up years of your life, you know? So in terms of the projects that you take on in the future, like, they really, really have to have meaning for you. You really have to believe in the story. You really have to want to tell that story, because there's a lot of dark nights making these films, and it takes a long time, and you really bleed for them. So it was a good reminder of making sure that it's something you really, really want to do.
I told the guys, this is a one-way trip. Once you start, you cannot stop.
Believe.